Jake, I was looking at the background here for the Mount, and this is kind of random. Did you cross paths at all with their coach growing up? He's from New Knoxville, and I can't find anything about his like middle school, high school years. But like, did you know each other growing up at all? I don't know when he left the state.
Yeah, not great, but familiar with him.
Okay.
You know, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys didn't like play against each other or anything like that?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, as far as like their team, what stands out about the way they play? Obviously, they took Maryland to overtime, but don't have a great record.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that game obviously could have went either way, and they were up at Cincinnati, played West Virginia tough, so they've been in all their games, you know, really, except the last one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think coming off that game, we anticipate to see their very best stuff tomorrow night. But they do a great job scoring from the 3-point line. You know, they got some really big time threats out there. You know, a lot of their points are coming from the 3-point line. We got to be mindful of that. But they move the ball well. You know, they do a great job of sharing it. So those are the key components of their offense that we got to be ready for.
I thought it was interesting after the game the other night. You'd said you really liked the maturity that your team showed in practice after beating Notre Dame. That they didn't say, okay, maybe we've arrived and we don't have to work as hard. How have you seen your team get ready for this? What has practice been like since the last game?
Yeah, it's been good. It's good. This team continues to practice well because there's a high level of maturity on our team, and our guys are motivated to continue to get better. You know, we haven't practiced perfect by any means, but this team is yet to have just a complete bad day. We've had some bad moments at times, but those are few and far between. But we don't have bad days, and I think our leadership plays a big role in that, and just the type of guys we have, the hunger they have to keep getting better is why.
Did you have a lot of bad days last year?
It was just a different vibe. It was a different vibe. I think the chemistry of this team's different. I think the experience that we have plays a role in all of that. But you know, it's different. If you were at practice last year, at practice this year, I think you know, especially for maybe a few days in a row, each you would notice a difference.
OHSAA voting today to allow high school athletes to get NIL deals in Ohio. Kind of twofold. How does that kind of affect you from a college recruiting standpoint? And two, I know you're a parent, but you know, your kids aren't exactly signing deals with Juicy Juice anytime soon. But I imagine put yourself in the shoes of a parent. What does that do for them?
You know, I think it's a good thing, and in support of it. I think we've seen over the years players have left the state. Good players have left the state. So hopefully this plays a role in helping to keep players in Ohio, because I think Ohio high school basketball is a great thing, and when it's really good and its best players are here, it's even better. So that's part of it. I think the landscape's changed. I think the big thing is you want an educational component to everything that goes with NIL. That's what we try to do in our program. But you know, if guys have an opportunity to thrive in that space even before they get to college, they should have that opportunity. So we're in full support, and you know, I think knowing the high school association in Ohio, that it's this stuff is always well thought out, and you know, there's people behind it. I think certainly on both sides, but this was a direction that needed to happen, and you know, I think it'll be a great thing for us.
Your kids would rep Bluey.
Yeah, well, you know, we got a long ways to go before that. Right now, we're just trying to, you know, make our bed and clean up after ourselves. So.
Gotcha.
Does that help, you think, well, I guess it hasn't happened yet, but in terms of guys just being used to what they're going to get into when they arrive at colleges, you think, help them, hey, we've kind of already gone through it, maybe on a slightly different level?
I think there's potential for that to be the case, certainly. You know, in our program, when you come to Ohio State, it's about way more than that.
Sure. And,
you know, I think guys, you know, people we recruit are aligned in that. You know, certainly NIL is an important factor. But, you know, getting a degree from Ohio State is as well. And being a part of this basketball family and the tradition of this program, that plays a factor as well. And player development, I still think, you know, at least the young men and the families we come across mostly, it still boils down to development. I think that's why you've seen, you know, our recruiting go so well, is because people know when you go to Ohio State, one, you're going to have unbelievable resources. And then two, when you look at our staff and the experience that we have in the player development space and having a head coach who's hands-on and involved in player development, I think, recruits and their family, it's really attractive to them. So we'll continue to target, people like that in recruiting, but NIL, is a factor and will always be a factor. And now it's going to be a factor that's made available to more people and obviously an important part of our recruiting base. So I think it's a good thing.
Wanted to check in with Devin. How's he adjusting to the position change? It seems like there's times where he's finding his offense, and then other times where maybe it's not as comfortable getting to his spots. What's your read on that?
Yeah, I think he's doing well. I mean, he was able to get a double last game, and what was a handful of less minutes because of the flow of the game. But I think for him, seeing him active on the glass was really important, because part of why we felt like him being on the wing could be an advantage for us was because of rebounding. Give us more positional size, which helps defensively in general, but specifically rebounding. So he's embraced that, and that's good because he's good at it, and we need him to do that. I think he's got to continue to be aggressive from three, and then continue to look for his spots driving like he did last game. The big thing I've challenged him on is being a good cutter, and that's he just doesn't have experience in that part, and I think that's the last part of this transition for him moving to the perimeter is figuring out when to cut, what the right time is and things. But we got great deal of confidence in him coming off ball screens or zoom actions or get actions in our system and making decisions, which could be for himself certainly or for his teammates. So I think it's been going well.
And then have you felt the momentum kind of a complete, just you guys basically the entire game had a complete offensive, defensive performance? I don't know if complete's the right word because it's never probably complete your eyes.
Well, yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I mean, we talked going into that game, it was important for us to play well on both sides of the ball. We had played 2 games well offensively, 2 games well defensively, and it was time to play well on both sides of the ball because we all know that's what we need to do, as the season progresses to win games at a high level. So great to see that. Certainly wasn't perfect. Certainly, would love to do it for 40 minutes. That's what we're striving for. But we played significant stretches of the game against Western Michigan at a high level on both sides of the ball, and that's what we need to continue to strive for.
You talk about you mentioned cutting a lot, and how important and integral that is to this offense. How hard is that to learn? You mentioned a guy like Devin doesn't have as much experience as that. Is that a skill that you can pick up? Is there a feel to that? The way that you guys view it, how hard is that to pick up?
There's, some guys have a natural feel for cutting, but I think it's something that you have to teach, and it's something we've practiced a great deal on since really we got together in June when we knew that this is how we wanted to play. We knew we had to practice that. So when you see our spacing, our 5-out spacing, we still want to put pressure on the rim. You can do that, with the drive. You can do that on the offensive glass. Another way to do it is by cutting, and you can cut the post. And guys have different cutting rules depending on their strengths and weaknesses. So it's something we work on a lot, and how cutting can, we have a thing we call cut assist, where guy cuts hard and he may not get a basket, but he may create a basket or an angle, an advantage for someone else because they cut hard. So we talk a lot about cut assists.
Do you track that?
We haven't formally kept a running tally, but we talk about it and show film on that after each game. So that's part of it, but it's really important to our system because you got to put pressure on the paint, and even though we're playing a 5-out kind of style, that's a big way to do it.
Does that make an offense more difficult to prepare for because it's harder to understand, when there's not a set necessarily that you're trying to read or you're trying to scheme against it? There seems like there's a lot of creativity and flow in that might be difficult to scheme against it. I don't know, does that make your offense more difficult to guard?
Yeah, I think so. Part of, having interchangeable parts, and we even have some set calls where we have 4 interchangeable parts within that set, so we don't have to necessarily stop, the pace. And this guy has to run over here, and that guy's got to run over there. Now we just got to fill these 4 spots, and guys know, hey, this is the action we're going to. and they know those kind of interchangeable four parts around our center. So I think that's helped us. But we're not calling as many sets as we called last year.
Right.
And we got some quick initiators that we want to flow into early offense, create an advantage, and then kind of the ball talks. The cutting tells us what our spacing needs to be, and our guys have done a great job picking it up. So you got to have a high IQ to play in the way we're playing, which we have a team full of guys who understand the game, who also spend a lot of time, on the game, watching film, developing those habits and ability to read, which I think has helped us. It's helped us a great deal, and it allows us to continue to evolve. So it's gonna get better the more time we get.
And you were talking last week about your 2-point field goal percentage and how high it's been, and how, where does the mid-range kind of fit into this era of college basketball? But like in general, where do you want your 2-point shots coming from? Are you okay with some of them being in the mid-range? I don't know if we talked about it that specifically last week.
Yeah, we prefer them to be in the paint.
Okay.
And obviously we're trying to get as many looks at the rim as possible.
Mm-hmm.
As far as traditional mid-range shots go, I think a shot which may be a strength for some guys might not be for others. We don't want, whether it's a strength or not, we don't want a high volume of mid-range shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our guys who are best at shooting off the bounce are all capable of shooting off the bounce from three. So I'd prefer a 3-point shot off the bounce versus a 17-foot 2 off the bounce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes the game presents those opportunities. I don't ever want our guys overthinking. I want them playing off instinct. We've defined, good shots, bad shots, really since we got together this summer. But I think our strength, the sum of our parts, is our strength offensively. So we should be striving for high quality shots every possession. And our guys are bought into that. What does our shot quality look like? And I think it's been really good so far this year. And part of the reason it's been really good is because we're not shooting a ton of mid-range shots, which oftentimes end up being contested. So I'm not hey, it's got to be below this percentage, or like, we're not in that technical with it.
Mm-hmm.
But to generalize, yes, we don't want a lot of mid-range shots, more threes, more paint touches, and then kind of go from there.
Unless you have a William Buford, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was elite.
Yeah.
Elite at it, yeah.
Or EJ.
Still is.
Yeah.
EJ was another one who was elite at it, yeah. But I think, Bruce can make them. I think Junie's a guy who can make them, but at times he takes harder shots than he has to. And so you saw last game, I thought he made great improvement. Notre Dame, he played really fast with the ball in his hands, almost sped up a little bit. Thought he was in total control when the ball was in his hands last game. And his decision-making was great. His 2-point field goal percentage was better because of it. And I think he'll continue to do that at a high level.
I know roles can change throughout the course of a season, but at this point in the year, do you feel like guys have settled into some form of a role, and you are having a good idea of like, okay, this guy and this guy here and this guy here, and when to use guys, things like that? Just as you go through the non-conference, I know that can be something that evolves.
Yeah, I think we're in a better place than we were 2 weeks ago. And, I think we'll be in a better place in, a week or two than we are today. Some of that's still evolving, but you're seeing an organic, I think, role definition exist. Certainly some of it we've talked about and talked with guys individually on, hey, here's what we're expecting from you when you're in the game, and do this at a really high level. I've talked about it. We got to continue to develop our depth. It's going to be important for us throughout the course of the year. So, I think part of our bench and our depth is still trying to figure that out, because we do need to have some scoring punch off our bench. I think Amari's provided some of that, last couple games as he continues to get more comfortable. But it's unique because after you kind of start the game, right, with our starting group, and you start to mix up some lineups, even in that regard, roles can change depending upon who you're on the floor with. Mm-hmm. So when you have Bruce, Junie, Devin, and Tilly on the floor, right, it may look one way, but when you only have 2 of those guys on the floor, then they may need to take a little bit more of the offensive burden and be a little more aggressive, hunting shots. So we're all just as early season working through that stuff. But I think in general, why I feel really good about it is because of the chemistry of this team. Got a close group of guys who enjoy playing together and who compete well together. And so that's why I think it's been able to go well as we're ironing out some of that stuff.
You've talked about the challenges of scheduling in a different universe. You guys are in the Bahamas this week. It's nice outside. I mean, it's seasonable, but like as far as like fitting in MTEs and how that fits into this new model of trying to schedule, like what goes into those decisions as far as like what events to play in, and is there any part of you that's like, man, I really wish I was in the Bahamas right now?
Yeah, listen, I mean, if I really step back and had time to think about it, I probably wish I was in the Bahamas a lot. But there's a lot I've talked a lot that goes into scheduling. Certainly, we've tried to be aggressive on scheduling a high major non-conference opponent in our arena every year. We made a point of that these first 2 years. We want to continue to do that. The other element is, there's at least, currently we'll see how the landscape holds, but there's an NIL element to scheduling.
Right.
And we've had to be aggressive in scheduling to help in that area. So that's been part of it too. And, the days I think of those until some things change with the kind of the fabric of those traditional MTEs, you're going to see some different avenues pop up, and you're going to see teams explore other avenues because there's just too much that goes with them. Mm-hmm. And for us, if we can boost our NIL, or boost whatever by looking at some other games, strength of schedule, all of that stuff, you got to take into consideration all of those things.
Okay.
So that's what we did, going to the city. Now, landscapes change, rules are changing constantly, so we'll see next year. Scheduling was an absolute nightmare this year, so it's not something I like to spend a lot of time dreading about right now. But we are in talks to, with some teams about potential home and homes, because we still want to do that. We want to continue to have as many home games as possible with the addition of another game next year. So that's going to play a role in how we determine our schedule. And I think it's great for our state. It's great for our program. It's great for our fans when we can play neutral site games in Ohio, and whether it's Cleveland this year. So looking at different areas of the state that we could potentially do that. So there's a lot that goes into it. The good thing for us is the Big Ten is an elite conference. So built in, you're going to have a high level of strength of schedule. But you are trying to consider the metrics for at-large berths while you put your schedule together, and you're predicting, which presents challenges, as well, because there's no perfect formula to do that. So scheduling is really complex.
Yeah.
But we always want to play a tough schedule. We want to play as many home games as we can, and we want to play a non-conference high major team in our building every year if we can. So that's kind of where we start, and then some of the other elements that come into it, we take into consideration.
Like, I'm gonna go home and watch the Players Era Festival. Like, how attractive is something like that? And there's been talks that you guys could be, playing there next year. Where does that kind of sit with you guys?
Yeah, I think it's, the traditionalist maybe in me, you whether it's Maui, whether it's Atlantis, those events you always held in such high regard, right? And you had to be invited to be a part of them, and it was great. And you could count on just such a high quality game, and so it was great to be playing those in this time of year. I think, again, moving forward, you almost have to, and those events had to be planned out far in advance.
Yeah.
So now it's more, we're a little bit more year-to-year basis, and again, some of those other factors I talked about. But I also think you're seeing now these new neutral site kind of one-offs, or these double headers that, like CBS Sports Classic for us, that are really high quality games. They're great for fans, and you're seeing some of those even this week. But yeah, I think those events are great, and because I've been around the game forever, I'll always have a place in my heart for those type of events. And I'm not saying we won't ever be a part of them, I just think for us right now, there's some other factors that we have to consider before we can, commit 3 or 2 games somewhere else. But yeah, it'd be great to, I'm sure my wife would like to play in the Bahamas or Maui or stuff too, but we got some other things we got to focus on.
In case we don't ask you tomorrow, do you have a favorite Thanksgiving side? Like I asked you this last week.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
You'll eat whatever's on the table.
I do. I've become less picky.
Okay.
I do like cranberry sauce though. I feel like that you can put on multiple things, so it's like an enhancement to many different things. But we're excited. We're going to celebrate with the team this week, and we'll celebrate a little bit earlier than most probably because we got some things going on there around Thanksgiving. So.
All right.
Thank you.